There are certain nights in history that entire communities agree never to speak of again. In central Alabama, that night was May 23, 1852, when the bodies of 17 people were discovered at the Yansy Plantation before dawn. The subsequent investigation was so shocking that the magistrate's report was sealed for over 7 decades. The documented evidence suggested that the horror began with 2 sisters who were identical in every way, yet silently competed for the affection of a man they legally owned. The Yansy Plantation, a testament to the wealth of the antebellum South, sat on 1,000 acres along the Alabama River. When Cornelius Yancey died in 1848, he left his massive estate to his unmarried, 23-year-old twin daughters, Carolyn and Catherine, a peculiar inheritance that became the talk of Montgomery society. The twins were physical mirror images, identical dark hair, pale skin, and commanding green eyes, but their temperaments were opposites. Carolyn, the elder, inherited her father's iron will and business acumen. She maintained the plantation's immaculate ledgers, managed shipping, preserved tradition, and held an unblemished social reputation. Catherine, by contrast, was defined by a wild streak. She read scandalous novels, rode unaccompanied, questioned boundaries, and found organized religion stifling. For 4 years, this delicate balance held. Caroline controlled the business, Catherine controlled the household, and the brutal overseer, Virgil Henley, maintained discipline over the 143 enslaved people. That careful equilibrium shattered in the spring of 1852. On March 5th, Caroline purchased a man named Samuel at the Montgomery slave market. Samuel was 27, stood 6'2", and possessed a remarkable, valuable asset: exceptional literacy and a refined manner of speech. Caroline paid a significant sum, intending to use him in the house for complex correspondence and record. However, she was unaware that Catherine had also been present at the auction, and had been captivated not by Samuel's utility, but by his dignity and the barely concealed contempt in his intelligent dark eyes. Samuel arrived 3 days later. Caroline immediately overruled the mistrustful overseer Henley, insisting Samuel would work inside the mansion. For the first 2 weeks, Samuel performed flawlessly deferential, meticulous, and showing none of the insolence Henley constantly warned about. Yet, his mere presence, his education, and the silent, unspoken tension between the 2 mistresses over his new role had already set the vast, prosperous Yansy Plantation on a deadly new course. Catherine continued to watch Samuel, finding excuses to be near him, observing the dignity beneath his compliance. The true barrier shattered on April 2nd in the library. Catherine violated every social code by closing the door and asking Samuel if he could genuinely read the books he catalogued. Samuel, risking his life, confessed he could. Catherine listened, enthralled, as Samuel spoke of Victor Hugo, discussing themes of sanctuary and persecution, of true beauty versus true ugliness, as if they were equals. This intellectual exchange was a fatal risk for Samuel, but it allowed him to momentarily exist as a person, not property. For Catherine, the conversations created a cognitive dissonance she could unresolve. How could she feel such deep connection with someone she was supposed to own? Carolyn, meticulous in her attention to detail, began noticing her sister's distraction. The truth was laid bare on May 1st. Samuel was missing for 30 minutes, returning with a piece of straw in his hair and an unconvincing excuse. That evening, Carolyn visited the stable loft and found a blanket in one of Catherine's French novels. The pieces snapped together with horrible clarity. Her identical twin was having a ruinous affair with a slave. Caroline's initial reaction was horror and rage, but beneath it simmered an emotion she couldn't suppress: jealousy. She, too, had secretly admired Samuel's intelligence and competence. In a decision that sealed the plantation's fate, Caroline chose competition over preserving order. Instead of exposing Catherine or sending Samuel away, she began manufacturing reasons to keep him late in the office, using her power as the plantation's manager to assign him unnecessary tasks. Samuel instantly recognized the Dana two powerful, desperate mistresses vying for him could only end in catastrophe. He tried to revert to the submissive mask, but Caroline's manufactured assignments cornered him. The Yansy Plantation became a pressure cooker of barely concealed desperation. The tension climaxed on May 8th when Caroline called Samuel into the locked office late at night. Samuel stood frozen, certain this was the moment his life would end, until Caroline spoke, her voice shaking slightly. The first time Samuel had ever heard the cool, calculated twin lose her control. In the locked office, Caroline delivered her terrifying ultimatum. She detailed the evidence of his affair with Catherine, making it clear she could have him whipped until he couldn't stand, sold south to the sugar plantations, or hanged by the sheriff. Then she offered the transaction. She would ensure his protection and safety, and perhaps even hint at future freedom if he transferred his attentions to her. Samuel had no choice. His consent was purchased with the stark threat of death and the faint hope of survival. He agreed to become, in essence, shared property between the twin sisters. For 2 agonizing weeks, Samuel was trapped. Catherine, blind to Caroline's blackmail, continued to seek him out, whispering romantically about running north. Caroline, meanwhile, summoned him constantly, demanding his time, his attention, and his body. The enslaved staff, including the experienced Dinah, noticed the radiating tension and exhaustion, warning Samuel to sabotage his work and get himself sold away before the inevitable bloodshed. But Samuel couldn't leave, held back by genuine affection for Catherine and the fear of a worse fate. The situation exploded on May 15th when Catherine discovered Caroline's involvement. Their sibling rivalry, years in the making, instantly focused on Samuel. Catherine confronted him, her face pale with anger and accusation, but Samuel delivered the brutal truth. You can't risk what I risk. If this comes out, you'll be socially ruined. I'll be dead. Those aren't equivalent consequences. Her desperate offer to leave north crumbled against the reality of capture, dogs, and the gallows. That night, Rosa Housegirl overheard the final, devastating argument between the twins. Catherine accused Caroline of wanting Samuel simply because she wanted him, but Caroline responded with cold finality. He's property. Mine. Purchased with my money to use as I see fit. Catherine, enraged, threatened to draw up legal manumission papers, but Caroline flatly refused consent, threatening to sell Samuel so far south Catherine would never see him again. The next morning, May 16th, Samuel Banis, he was found in the old cotton gin house, sitting in a state of complete resignation. When confronted by Caroline, he finally broke the mask he had worn for survival. You can't force someone to choose between 2 people who own them, he said quietly, his eyes holding something Caroline had never seen in an enslaved person before. There's no choice in that. Just survival. He rejected both her romantic fantasy and her brutal pragmatism. Sell me, whip me, kill me. I don't care, but I won't keep doing this. The defiance and despair in his voice left Caroline staring, her carefully controlled demeanor finally shattered. Caroline's expression surprisingly softened into regret, acknowledging the impossibility of the situation. She offered a solution that was safe for the plantation. She would sell Samuel to a mobile factory for quick resale, ensuring his permanent removal. But Catherine burst into the office, trembling, screaming. You will not sell him. Caroline countered that as half-owner. She had the power to force the sale of a disruptive asset. In her final, desperate bid, Catherine proposed the legally dubious and socially catastrophic say-will take. Samuel has her full share of the divided plantation assets, free him immediately through manumission papers, and marry him. They would leave Alabama forever. The silence that followed was absolute. Caroline's response was, Ice, you've lost your mind. They'll commit you to an asylum for insanity. Or worse, they'll investigate why you're so attached to this particular piece of property. And then Samuel dies. Catherine, helpless against the brutality of this legal reality, stood weeping. Samuel, caught in the eye of the storm, made his move. I'll choose. You want me to choose? I'll choose Miss Catherine. She's the one who first saw me as human. Hope flared in Catherine's eyes, but Caroline's smile was cold and terrible. Your choice means nothing. You're a slave. You don't get to choose. In a moment of catastrophic violence, Catherine reached into her pocket, clutching a small pistol. She demanded Caroline sign over her half-ownership of Samuel. Caroline stared down the barrel, regaining her composure, reasoning that shooting her would only ensure Samuel's sale and Catherine's hanging. Samuel's calm voice cut through the tension. "Miss Catherine, put the gun away. Please, nothing good comes from this." She obeyed, but the moment the pistol was drawn ensured the total collapse of order. Caroline, shaken but resolute, declared she was going to Montgomery to formally sell Samuel within a week. The house staff immediately spread word of the confrontation, the gun, the fight over the slave, the plantation power structure visibly fracturing. Overseer Virgil Henley, panicked by the potential for rebellion, demanded Caroline allow a public whipping of Samuel to reassert control. Caroline, sickened by the thought of punishing Samuel, refused, stiffening against Henley's sexist condescension. She had lost control and, wrestling with her guilt, she sat alone in her office. Meanwhile, Catherine, driven by romantic martyrdom, wrote a letter detailing a desperate escape plan. She would sacrifice everything: inheritance, position. family to help Samuel escape to a rumored Quaker contact in Selma that very night, claiming Samuel had attacked her to create a distraction. Samuel received the message and felt despair. He knew the dogs would track him within hours. Escape was impossible, yet he felt obligated to comply, clinging to the irrational hope that Catherine's love could somehow overcome the brutal machinery of slavery. His housemate, Isaac, offered a chilling alternative. Resistance, not escape, not submission, but direct confrontation with the system itself. Samuel knew Isaac meant death, but when faced with the inevitable choice of being sold or running towards certain capture, the ultimate act of defiance remained an open possibility. As midnight approached on May 22, 1852, the Yansy Plantation was a ticking time bomb. Catherine, dressed for escape, believed her love could overcome the system. Virgil Henley, the brutal overseer, was convinced the chaos was due to weak female leadership and was preparing to reassert control. Unbeknownst to everyone, Rose, the house girl, terrified of losing her family in the inevitable fallout, made a decision that sealed Samuel's fate. She told Henley everything about the twins, competition, and Catherine's escape plan for that very night. Henley understood the gravity of the situation required drastic intervention. He gathered 6 trusted men from neighboring plantations, intent on catching Samuel in the act and dealing with him permanently to send a message across Dallas County. At 11:45 p.m., Samuel left his quarters. He was walking directly into a deadly ambush. He found Catherine in the garden house. She smiled, desperate and hopeful. Samuel told her the brutal truth. "We won't make it. This ends badly, no matter what happens next." Before he finished speaking, the door crashed open. Henley stood in the entrance, pistol raised. Backed by 6 armed men and torches, the scene froze. A white woman and an enslaved man caught in an embrace, surrounded by the full, violent force of the plantation system. Henley immediately ordered Samuel away, claiming they had caught him attempting to assault Catherine, a lie that guaranteed Samuel's swift execution. Catherine, horrified, stepped between them, shouting that she had invited him. "This doesn't concern you anymore," Henley warned, threatening to claim she was complicit if she didn't cooperate with the assault narrative. Just as the standoff intensified, Caroline appeared in her nightrobe, having followed a sense of dread. She instantly took in the scene, Catherine shielding Samuel, Henley ready to kill. Caroline faced a shattering choice. Save Samuel by exposing the truth and thus destroying the family reputation, or sacrifice him to preserve the social order that sustained her. Looking at her pleading sister, Caroline made her choice. Mr. Henley is correct. Samuel has become violent and unstable. He needs to be removed from the property immediately. I'll sign whatever papers are necessary to authorize his sale to the territories. Catherine went white with shock and betrayal. In the chaotic aftermath, Samuel stepped forward, placing himself between the 2 sisters. "Stop, both of you. This isn't worth destroying each other over. I'm not worth destroying each other over." But before the tragedy could conclude, the horror was only beginning to escalate beyond anyone's imagination. Samuel looked at Caroline with an expression that was either forgiveness or condemnation. "I don't have a choice," he said. Neither do you, I suppose. Henley, eager to restore order, ordered his men to take Samuel to the oak tree by the Genhausa, phrase that meant only one thing. Lynching Caroline's face went pale. She had chosen the system over mercy, confirming Henley's false assault narrative, and now the choice was spiraling beyond her control. She opened her mouth to argue. Tin closed it, unable to walk back her lie. Seeing her sister's paralysis, Catherine made her final, futile gesture of defiance. She wrapped her arms around Samuel and declared, "Then you'll have to take me, too." Henley's men forcibly dragged her away, locking her in a room. Caroline, watching her sister scream, gave the fatal command to Henley. "Do what you think is necessary, but make it quick." Samuel was taken to the old oak tree, a silent witness to plantation cruelty. Samuel died sometime before 1 a.m. In a fit of grief and rage, Catherine managed to break free from her locked room, climbed out the second-story window, breaking her ankle in the process, and limped to the oak tree. Finding Samuel's body still swaying, she cut him down with a knife. As she cradled his corpse, Caroline rushed from the house. The twins looked at each other across Samuel's body, realizing the full extent of the destruction. "What have we done?" Catherine wailed. The screaming woke. The enslaved quarters. People emerged, saw Samuel's body, and saw Henley and his armed men. Old Dinah broke the silence of fear. "They killed him over jealousy. That's what this has always been." The usual obedience fractured. Isaac, Samuel's friend, picked up a shuvala, small act of resistance that shattered the fragile order. When Henley demanded they put down their makeshift weapons, Isaac's voice was deadly quiet. "Peacefully. Like how you peacefully killed Samuel." The violence exploded. The confrontation escalated into chaos as old grievances, combined with fresh horror. People died on both sides. Catherine, going mad, retrieved the pistol and began firing at Henley and his men, killing 2, before she was shot herself, falling beside Samuel. Caroline, trying to stop the fighting, was caught in the crossfire and fell near her sister. The twins, identical in life, died minutes apart, their blood mingling on the Alabama dirt. By the time the reinforcements arrived, 17 people were dead. The Yansy twins, Henley and 4 of his men, Samuel, and 9 other enslaved workers. The Yansy Plantation burned that night, the mansion and gin house consumed by flames. The official story, constructed to protect social order, claimed Samuel attempted assault, and the enslaved workers revolted. It erased the love triangle and the sisters' competition deals too dangerous to reveal. The surviving enslaved population was scattered and sold. The truth was contained in the testimonies sealed for 73 years. When the documents were opened in 1925, they revealed the disturbing story of 2 sisters whose possessiveness destroyed everyone around them. The core lesson was not about simple villainy, but about the fundamental sickness of the antebellum South. The contradiction of being able to love someone you believed you owned. Samuel's grave was never marked, but the Yancey twins were interred with a shared headstone that mentioned nothing of the 17 lives lost. The oak tree, the silent witness, finally fell in 1912. But the descendants, both black and white, kept the catastrophe alive in fragments and whispers. The ultimate tragedy was that 17 people died because 2 women couldn't accept that you cannot own another person's heart, no matter how completely you own their body.